Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of the Ostrich Technique Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Anand.
And I am your other host, Chris.
So yeah, Chris, how's it going today? We're back again with another episode. This time we're doing Captain America. How are you feeling about this one?
Um, Feeling good. I actually like this more, rewatching it than, maybe I remembered it.
hmm
So overall, I thought it was a good one.
Yeah, no, I look on this movie fondly overall. I mean, it's not like, the greatest film ever, but like I think there's definite charm to it, and I think a lot of that has to do with the smart move, honestly, they made at making this a period film,
hmm
making this set in the 1940s, very true to the original Captain America origin story, which I think I really appreciated. I don't know if you felt the same way.
hmm Yeah, it worked well as a period piece. I think that's kind of part of the charm of it, which a lot of the current day MCU films kind of lack.
Yeah, yeah, no, I would agree. And I think, I mean, they tried to, I think, recapture that a little bit with Captain Marvel set
Yeah,
in the
that's exactly what I was gonna
90s.
say.
But but that felt a lot more like window dressing. Like there was like, oh man,
Yeah,
she like pops up in a blockbuster, and oh
blockbuster. Yeah,
man, like you see a younger Fury. But like, there's not really too many more references to the '90s. I felt beyond that.
I agree.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean this one, I guess there's really no escaping it. I mean they're literally in World War II, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I really enjoy this movie, but yeah, I mean, I guess we can, just jump right into it.
All
I don't know if
right.
you want to give the
Yeah.
usual intro for our folks here at home.
Sure. So, Captain America, the First Avenger. So, Steve Rogers, a rejected military soldier, transforms into Captain America after taking a dose of a super soldier serum. But being Captain America comes at a price as he attempts to take down a warmonger and a terrorist organization. So, this movie is directed by Joe Johnston, and it has quite the stacked cast if you're looking at it now. But it's starring Chris Evans as Captain America, Haley Atwell, Sebastian Stan, Tommy Lee Jones, and Hugo Weaving.
Solid, solid, cool. Okay, so I guess we can just jump right in. I mean, I guess we sort of went through our overall thoughts already, but I guess before we jump into Act One, is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
Now let's head into Act One.
All right, cool. So Act One, we start right away in we kind of don't know where it is actually. I mean, we start off sort of in the snow, in the dead of winter, it seems like, or where it's obviously very snowy, and you see a bunch of people coming in, and obviously we realize it's, modern day, and they find this like big structure, and of course, how they start off is they find something frozen in the ice, and then that ends up being Cap's shield, which really sets us up for going back into the past. And I was wondering, what did you think of the opening there, Chris? Like,
I
it's
liked the opening. I thought it
yeah,
was mysterious. It was, it kind of laid the groundwork of, where we'll see at the end of the film how he gets there.
hmm
But it was just a nice tease, in my opinion.
yeah,
Um,
no,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's a nice short opening. It doesn't really overstay its welcome, and it's like really it gets to the point there. In terms of like, there's some mystery there, and I really like the whole tone that it sets. Like, oh, this is like something that they've discovered or they're rediscovering or something like that. And yeah, I agree. I think I really like this opening too. I will say though, I know that you and I have seen this deleted scene from The
Hulk.
Incredible Hulk where Bruce Banner is originally doing meditation out in roughly the same area, and when he dives into the water, we do see the frozen body of Cap.
Well, it's not necessarily meditation, more like he's trying to take his own life, but
Okay, okay, yeah, well,
he's a gun in
okay,
his hand, and then the Hulk transforms and prevents him from doing that. But yeah, anyway,
yes, yes, okay, that's a fair point. I guess I don't remember that scene as well as you do, but I guess how do you think that stacks up? I guess with the opening that we have, would you prefer that one? Do you prefer the one that we have now? I guess that's not an opening. I guess the tease in Incredible Hulk. Do you like that we sort of just start out of the blue without really with very few teases to Captain America. Of course, we got like a little bit of the Shield in Iron Man 2, but
Yeah, I liked it.
mhm.
Honestly, I feel like it would have been fine if they put that tease in Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
So then at least you have some sort of, connection between the two. But in terms of consistency or continuity, it doesn't make sense, just given how it was in
Mhm.
Incredible Hulk versus here. He's literally, inside, the plane. But no, I'm fine either way with it. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty much agreed with you there. I think that there's some merit in like, having a little bit of that interconnectivity from film to film, but I don't necessarily dislike the way that they start the opening here, and I feel like we get enough information already from it. I was probably more just like a little Easter egg for the fans that Cap is out there in Incredible Hulk, but I don't mind this opening either. I wouldn't mind it if we had it. I wouldn't mind it if we don't. I'm
Hmm.
kind of indifferent, I guess.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
yeah, and of course, I think from there, then we flash back to Tonesburg. Of course, we've now seen Tonesburg before in the first Thor movie. That's where Odin fought the Frost Giants for the first time, and now we're here and we see an imposing figure come in and basically tear down this church trying to look for something, who of course we know later on to be Johann Schmidt, and he comes in looking for the Tesseract. And we get a little bit of teases here and there of Norse mythology and how it ties into that. And yeah, I mean, what did you think of the way that all of that stuff ties in, Chris? Like the sort of Norse mythology and how
Yeah.
this movie comes right after Thor, basically.
Yeah, I think it was a really smart way to tie in the movies.
Yeah,
Because, Thor being this sort of space movie, space opera, whatever you have it, it's very, it doesn't really connect well to more of these grounded sort of stories. So it was a really cool way to really connect them. I thought it was pretty organic too.
yeah,
Um, so I think it was a great way to say, hey, we have this sort of fanatical person who believes in this mythology, and you buy it because he is kind of crazy, Johann Schmidt. So
yeah. No, definitely. I think that that's really it was. I think the way you said it was good. I think it's really organic the way that they sort of lead in from Thor into this, and I think it helps that Thor came right before this too. I mean, they
mhm.
both I think came out in 2010, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so there you go. I think that that
or
really also.
wait, 2011?
Or did Thor come out in '09?
No,
Oh
no, no,
no,
no,
11. They
11.
both came out in
They're
11.
both 11.
They both came out in 11, right? Iron Man 2 came out in 2010. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, regardless, they both came out the same year, and I think part of that, helps sort of connect one to the other,
Hmm.
and you really start seeing more of those connections, and that was sort of the way to tie in Thor there. I will say also, I really like the sort of cinematography here. I mean, this is like, I mean, I think this is a common complaint with the Marvel movies in general. The cinematography isn't like, stellar. I think until we get to like a couple of
Eternals.
like movies here to like Guardians of the Galaxy where they really embrace like color and not just sort of the boring grays and dull
Yep.
tones. But I think it sort of works here where there's like sort of the earthy tones, like they're trying to show something old Norway, and then they sort of cut it with like the harsh, bright light of the Tesseract when Schmidt is looking at it
Hmm.
initially.
It's
But
very, very Pulp Fiction-y.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, like with the briefcase and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It honestly even has like little bits of some other movies. Like I'm trying to think of like even like Indiana Jones almost like
Hmm.
Raiders of the Lost Ark
Yeah.
where they open the Ark of the Covenant and you see like all of like the beams and all like the light
Hmm.
coming off of it and stuff. I don't know. I really like the little bit of cinematography we got there, but I mean I guess it's just a bit here in the overall sort of picture, which is kind of I don't know. Cinematography is kind of, I guess, samey here. It's nothing to write home about, I would say.
Hmm.
I don't know if you had any different thoughts on that
Nope.
on that.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Of course. Yeah, and I think as an introduction to Schmidt and the Red Skull, I thought that was honestly kind of a nice subtle way. We never get his name, of course, when he's in
Well,
that whole Norway scene, but when
oh
he
yeah,
kills the
yeah,
man,
yeah.
you get the little blood on the Hydra pin, and it
Yep.
like it's a nice little nod that he's the Red Skull there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you can even looking back and just rewatching this, you can see when Schmidt turns, you see the side of his face like beneath his like on his jawline, beneath his earlobe. You can see it looks like it's kind of
Mm,
stitched together. Um,
yeah.
so obviously we find out later it's a mask to hide his red skull. But yeah,
Of
little things like
course.
that are great when you rewatch and you pick out those little details.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You stole a point of mine that I had later on where you could see that, I think, a bit more clearly. But yeah, no, definitely. It's really cool that they have those little bits there from the makeup. Like they didn't have to do that. And I think that it's just good attention to detail there.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, after the whole Norway sequence, we sort of jump to New York, where we see Steve. We finally meet Steve Rogers looking to enlist, and we get that whole sequence of him, being really patriotic, trying to sign up and getting rejected, and then getting beat up by the man who was sort of disruptive at the movie theater, and gets saved by his friend Bucky. And what do you think of that as like an intro to Steve overall? Like, how do you feel that that works for you?
I think it work. I think it shows right away what his character is.
Yeah.
Um, putting willing to put his life on the line, um, for others. Him trying to enlist in the army under fake name, because he's been rejected so many other times, and then just trying to be respectful, and then willing to get bullied essentially because he doesn't like bullies.
Yeah.
I think it's very core to his character, and I think it was a good way to introduce him. Um, yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a really good introduction. I think, like I said, or like you said, basically, it's a really good setup to who he is. I mean, very patriotic, obviously, a sense of duty, a sense of purpose, and he's not really afraid to stand up to bullies like this guy who's just being disruptive in the theater and is like willing to beat him up. Of course, we get the little tease of his line, "I can do this all day," which pops up a couple of other times throughout the movies, which is it's interesting that the director sort of picked up on that as Cap's character
Hmm.
went along. But yeah, and I mean it's also a good introduction to his relationship with Bucky a little bit, because
Hmm.
they Bucky. I mean, it sort of almost has like a comic book style like Peter Parker, Harry Osborn, where Harry's always looking out for Peter,
Hmm.
especially against like Flash and stuff. And similar to this, it seems like Bucky's always the one that's sort of looking out for Steve.
Hmm. And
Yeah,
it was an interesting sort of change or turn from the comics, given that Bucky was the kind of the kid, the smaller person, just Cap's sidekick.
yeah.
Whereas at least during the introduction, it's the other way around. Um, so it was a good sort of twist on the classic comics, which I didn't mind at all. I think it made a lot of sense actually.
Yeah, I mean, in the comics, I guess was Steve like meant to be like scrawnier than Bucky, or was Bucky always like sort of a similar sort of stature to the original Steve?
No, at least from what I've known is that he was very much sort of like a Robin to Steve's sort of Batman, if you will. Like he was
Hmm.
legitimately like kind of like a kid.
Gotcha.
Um, so
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess they did adapt it, but I think I agree with you. It makes a lot more sense in the context of this film for sure,
Hmm.
and I like the way that they set that up. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's a good, introduction to them. And then they, move on to the World's Fair where they are, we get a little glimpse of Howard Stark. And I think I really like the sort of glimpse of his character that we got there, where you can see very much that the guy, I forget the name of the actor who plays him.
Dominic Cooper.
Dominic Cooper. Yeah, you can definitely see he took notes from Robert Downey Jr.'s performance. You could definitely tell he's trying to play
Hmm.
that same vein of like, playboy, a little bit of a chauvinist dude. I mean, where I guess Tony gets all of that sort of swagger from. Um, and yeah, and then of course that's where, and while they're watching the whole thing go on, and is where Steve sort of peels away and tries to go recruit again and
Yeah.
join the army, and that's where he has that whole argument with Bucky and then Dr. Erskine, listen or overhears that whole argument and inspires him a little bit. But I mean, I guess here you get a little bit more of that motivation of Steve, right? I mean, is there anything else that stuck out to you from, I guess, the whole World's Fair bit?
No, I think again, like you said, plays to Steve's character. Um, you know, introduction to Howard Stark, like you mentioned, the introduction to, I guess, the predecessor to the repulsor technology, which was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I guess things don't really get started until that meeting between Erskine and Steve.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, even then, like Erskine and Steve, like Erskine has the conversation, like, "Oh, you want to go kill some Nazis?" Like he's trying to. It's all a test, and I mean, it's interesting that Steve even then is like, I don't want to kill anyone. Like I just don't like bullies, and I think it's all very consistent with the character. And I mean, I would say that the script in this movie isn't particularly great through and through, especially in the end. I feel like it gets a little bit weaker, but I feel like these sort of moments again, where Steve is, interacting with Erskine or where he's interacting with Peggy. Like I think that those moments really work well. And even if the script isn't like the most, mind bending, like it's not like Aaron Sorkin level dialogue, but you definitely get enough of the character there, I think, from the dialogue that they're trying to put across. And I think that that works
Hmm.
really well.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and then of course, once he's enlisted, that's where we get the whole Camp Lehigh sequence. And I think the Lehigh sequence again sort of emphasizes the points that, Steve isn't really the ideal soldier in terms of physicality, but he has all of the other personalities that Erskine's looking for in terms of like he's a little bit more cunning, like with the whole flag sequence where everyone else is trying to get the flag and he outsmarts everyone. And then the whole bit about guts where Colonel Phillips throws the fake grenade and then Steve jumps over it and tries to protect everyone. And yeah, I mean, you get, I think, a really good sense of Steve's character. I mean, was there anything else you picked up on from the whole Lehigh sequence?
No, not really. I mean, even then you can see he is being bullied.
Oh yeah,
Even though
like,
they're in the same unit for the army, there's still people bullying him, even though they're supposed to be essentially, brothers in arms.
oh for
Um,
sure, yeah, good old
um,
Hodges.
yeah, and then obviously there's the introduction to Peggy, and then you can still see sort of, not see, sort of, you can very much see the misogyny towards Peggy being just a woman, especially even though she's such higher ranking within the
Mm,
or I guess she's not. I don't know if she's higher ranking, but she's clearly in a very high up position within the what was it, the SSR? Is that what it's called?
yeah, SSR, Strategic
Um,
Scientific Reserve. Yeah.
yeah, and even then she's still you know getting misogynistic comments about her,
Oh,
even though
for
she
sure.
kind of
Yeah.
holds this power over them.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, again, Hodges really setting the standard here for 1940s men, I guess.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's a good point though that you bring up that this is our introduction to Peggy's character, and I mean, she pops up a lot through the MCU, but Haley Atwell, I think, just did such a good job portraying her, and really set a good foundation for her character as we went on through the rest of the MCU because she pops up like a handful of times again. Like, I mean, she pops up obviously in Endgame and she pops up in Ant-Man and she pops up. She had her own show. I don't know, but that's sort of a gray area. I don't know if we classify that as MCU or not, but yeah, I mean, regardless, she did a really good job sort of setting up that character, and you really get the sense that she really doesn't take any sort of crap from anyone. Like she's
Hmm.
clearly taken enough crap in her life, and I think that part of that is she's clearly a very sort of self-assured and confident individual, and that's why she stands up to someone like Hodges and literally punches him in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, of course, then the whole bit. I mean, the whole Act One basically ends with the serum infusion. Basically, it's the serum infusion, and then the chase where, um, you know, Steve gets infused with the serum, and then is bombarded with lighter Vita rays, and then Erskine is killed. Where the Hydra agent steals the serum and tries to escape, and Steve actually tries to stop him, and A couple of things from this whole sequence was one, we get a little more glimpse of 1940s New York in Brooklyn in particular, because that's where they seem to have their secret base. And again, I really like the whole setting of the 1940s. Again, I really like that they kept this a whole period piece. Um, the other thing that I noticed was, and I guess I was reflecting on this a bit more, was especially after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we obviously saw that the serum gets remade, but none of them were like particularly like jacked or buff. And I didn't totally, I guess, internalize why. And I realize now from this movie, it's because of the Vita rays. Like Steve got the
Yep.
serum, and it was the Vita rays that made him, I guess, all beefy and,
Yep.
jacked. And of course, once he comes out of the, I guess
Little
what
pod
would you
thing.
call it? Like the pod thing? Yeah. I have to say, probably one of the best shirtless, like, MCU moments, I have to say. Like, that,
You are
very
thirst
iconic.
trapping right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was a real it's definitely a thirst trap, but it was a real good sequence, I would say. And
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
what was it? Haley Atwell, like when she touched Chris Evans' chest, like that was just not scripted apparently or something.
yeah, yeah,
She was
yeah.
just like genuinely like surprised and just, in awe.
I mean, aren't we all in awe of
Yes.
Chris Evans? But yeah, I mean, that was, man. He really. I mean, he really does capture the physique of. I mean, regardless of what you think of the acting performance or of Captain America, like he really gets the physicality of Captain America completely down.
Hmm.
Um, and credit to him and his trainers to get him to that ability. But yeah, and I think the last bit I think from the sequence which really stood out to me was even while he's chasing the secret agent, like I like those little moments where he's like not used to his own body and
I
he's
was
like
about to
sort of,
say,
yeah,
yeah,
like you can tell like he crashes into the dress
window,
store
yeah.
and like he's like looking at himself like, oh man, I can run fast, I can do all these things. Like it was honestly, I like those little bits of character that popped up there. But I've talked quite a bit on this whole serum infusion and the chase sequence. What did you think about
No,
the whole
I
sequence?
I totally agree. Like I was literally gonna bring up the whole him being sort of off balance and trying to get used to his new physique.
Yeah,
Um, and uh, we do get sort of a nod to him having a shield with the star in it, with the the taxi cab door with the star in it coming off, and him using that as a shield
yeah.
against the Hydra agent
Hmm.
Heinz Kruger, I think his name is.
Was it? Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so we get that nod or foreshadowing. Obviously in the way beginning, when Steve is being bullied or beat up in the alley, we have Steve holding a circular garbage can top as like a
Yeah.
shield. So we're getting. I love this sort of progressive foreshadowing
Yeah, for
that
sure.
we're getting, and then really the only a complaint I do have is that well, first of all, Bravo. I think they did a very good job putting the CGI Chris Evans head on just the thin actor's body. I think that was done pretty
Yes.
well.
Mm.
Um, but my complaint here is that I feel like Chris Evans' voice just doesn't belong with that body. Like I feel like they should have
Mm.
made his voice maybe like an octave or two higher, just because
Yeah.
as you do get sort of, I guess, bigger, your your at least for guys, the voice tends to drop a little bit more. So
Yeah.
I would have liked to see that, and just have him come out of the pod now fully formed as Captain America with, Chris Evans' normal voice. But it's a minor
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't bring up the whole CG that they had for scrawny Captain America, but I agree with you. The CG for that was completely seamless. Like you couldn't tell at all that there was his face was sort of glued onto someone else's. So they did a really really good job there. And it's interesting on the voice bit because I was thinking about that a little bit, and I don't know. I agree with you. I think overall, like it could have probably been a little bit higher, but I I don't know. It still didn't take me out of it. Like I guess it is a
Hmm.
minor complaint even from your end, right? Like it's not
Yeah,
something that like completely breaks the character. But I
correct.
think I agree with you that if I were given an option, I would have probably preferred a higher voice for
Hmm.
Steve overall. But yeah, I mean, I think anything else any other thoughts on this? I guess whole sequence here?
No, nope, nothing to
No.
add.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good, I think, setup overall. Like it's again, nothing revolutionary, but it's a good setup. You know, you get all of the moving pieces. You get Cap becoming Cap. You get all of the major players set up here overall, and yeah. And one other thing that I didn't mention was uh, we do get Schmidt coming to Germany also in the first sequence, and actually we meet Arnim Zola as well.
Hmm.
And every time that we actually interact with a Tesseract, even in like for most of the movie, there's only really one scene where we
You
see it
can't really see
otherwise.
it.
Exactly.
It's
That
just
that
a
was
light. Yeah.
Yes, that was the point that I was going to make, is that it's like so bright that you can't even see it, and it's like still shrouded in mystery, which I kind of like that, stylistic choice, honestly.
Hmm. Although it just then that continuity just does not carry through any of the other films. But yes.
Well, yes, I will. Yes, that's true, but they do set that up at the end of the movie. Is what I was going to say. Is there like once Cap knocks Red Skull onto the thing, and this is obviously we're jumping a bit here. When it knocks out of like the holster that it's in, is when it's not bright anymore, and I guess the mystery of it is sort of gone, and you actually see the you
Hmm.
know Tesseract not so bright that you can actually see what it looks like.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess any other final points? Sorry, I brought up I guess another point there, but
Yeah. No. No. I got nothing else to add.
cool. Okay. So, I guess before we jump into Act Two, we usually break this up with either a Stan Lee cameo, a ranking, or trivia. Of course, Stan Lee has not cameoed yet in the movie, so we are gonna move on to trivia, kind of like how we did with Thor last episode. So, of course, Chris, last time you asked me the questions, so, we're jumping back where I will be asking you the questions this time. And hopefully you've not cheated again, but I have 5 questions prepped for you. Are you
I never
ready?
cheat. What do you mean?
Of course, no. We're both men of principle here. We don't cheat. We don't,
Yes.
look at IMDb beforehand. But yeah, no, I trust you completely. I don't think that you would have cheated. But anyway, let's jump right into it. So, question one for you. Why did Stanley Tucci take the role of Dr. Erskine? And I know this is a bit,
Oh, this is very
open.
broad. Yeah.
Yeah, very broad question. So I've made this multiple choice to make it,
Oh, excellent.
narrow it
Okay,
down.
good.
Yeah. So option A, Joe Johnston is a friend of Stanley Tucci and convinced him to join. Choice B, Stanley Tucci is a big fan of the Captain America comics and lobbied to join the MCU in any role he could get. Choice C, Stanley Tucci always wanted to learn a German accent and this gave him that opportunity. And choice D, Stanley Tucci was signed on initially to Thor, but had a schedule conflict came up, so he was instead cast in Cap 1.
Hmm. Oh, I've heard C before, but that might have been for Hugo Weaving. Uh, I feel like he wasn't supposed to be in Thor. That's my guess. I'm gonna rule out D.
Okay.
Um, uh, A was he was a friend of the director.
Yeah, he was a friend of Joe Johnston, and Joe
And then
Johnston convinced him to join.
okay, and then B was that he was a fan of the comics
He
and
was a
wanted
fan
to.
of Captain America comics, yeah, and asked to join.
Let's go with A.
A, well, your initial instinct was correct, that it was actually he wanted to learn a German accent.
Dang.
Yeah. I was surprised by this. I mean, I guess Stanley Tucci being Italian and all, but I guess it was
Yeah.
interesting he wanted to learn a German accent.
Maybe I got him and Hugo Weaving confused then. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, they both do German accents, but
yeah.
yeah. I tried to make them not so like not such a giveaway because
Yeah.
otherwise but yeah. Anyway, question 2 now. So there were going to be 2 cameos in Cap 1 which ended up not working out. I want you to name one of those 2 cameos.
What do you mean by they ended up not working out? Like they filmed it, but it never made the movie,
No,
or
they didn't film they didn't film these cameos, but these were cameos that were discussed and thought about internally before the movie was made.
Wolverine.
That is correct. Yeah,
Yes, I
Wolverine. So it was
actually did
going to
know that.
be
Yeah, in a
James
montage or whatever, right?
James Howlett was going to be a soldier. And do you want to take a guess at the other one? You won't get any extra points, but
I mean, I feel like a Wolverine Sabretooth thing would kind of make sense given, X-Men Origins,
Mm,
but I'm not gonna go with Sabretooth.
okay.
Uh hmm. I feel like it's probably some sort of other MCU character that we have now,
Okay.
but uh there's gotta I don't know, like a Black Panther maybe?
No. No, it's not Black Panther. So it's Logan, and in the same vein, it was Eric Lenscher. It was Magneto.
Oh, that would have made sense. That would
Yeah,
have made sense.
so Logan was going to be a soldier, and then Eric Lenscher, I guess they would have had a scene at some sort of internment camp, and he was going to be a prisoner
Yeah,
there.
had
But
to,
of
yeah.
course, it was because of Fox having the
Yeah.
rights, they couldn't do it, which is why it didn't work out. I didn't want to give, too much away
Yeah.
there, but you got one of them, so you get the point for that question. So question three. Joe Johnston is an ILM veteran and has worked on numerous films in his long career. One notable film from his past is referenced a couple of times indirectly in Cap 1,
Oh,
and I want you to name this movie.
I don't even know what other movies he directed.
No, not necessarily directed. These are other movies that he's worked on.
Okay. For ILM? Oh.
Yeah. He's an old school ILM vet, if that helps at all. Like he's been there, like he's an old time vet from ILM.
I feel like I don't know. I feel like when I think of ILM, I think of Star Wars, but I don't know if he was involved in Star Wars.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna guess some Indiana Jones movie. I don't
Well,
know
get
which one, but
well, guess which one, Indiana Jones. Take a guess as to which one.
Raiders.
Raiders. Wow, that's a good guess. I tried to seed that a little bit earlier because that is correct. It was Raiders: A
Oh.
Lost Ark.
Whew.
Yeah. So Red Skull. There's a couple of references. So the Red Skull getting consumed at the hands of the Tesseract at the end is
Oh
similar to the
yeah.
Ark of the Covenant, how it killed all the Nazis and melted them all.
Hmm.
There's another one. So Cap throws the Hydra bad guy into the propeller at the
Yeah.
end as well. That's kind of how like the big muscly dude gets hit by the propeller when they're fighting in Morocco. And then when after he holds the cosmic cube, Johann Schmidt or makes a comment about how Adolf Hitler searches for trinkets in the desert, which is probably another clear reference to him looking for the Ark in the desert.
Got it.
Yeah. I thought those were little cool teases. And I guess
Yeah.
to your question earlier about what Joe Johnson directed, probably the most well-known thing that he directed besides Cap 1 is the original Jumanji with Robin Williams.
Mm.
But
And
yeah, he also
Kristen
directed Jurassic
Dunst.
Park 3, which is not
Oh
that
my.
great.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
But yeah, Jumanji's probably his best film, I would say, from his directorial um, you know, backlog. All right. Next question. So you have 2 points right now. That's pretty good. This one's probably a gimme, so I think you might get this one. So when Red Skull picks up the Tesseract at the end of the movie and he isn't killed, he is instead transported to where is he transported?
Well, I mean, now we know, but I mean,
Yes.
at the time of the movie, we just didn't know. But yeah, you
Yeah,
get transported to Vormir.
yes, that is correct. Of course. Yeah. I mean, we obviously didn't know this at the time of the film, but yes, he was transported to Vormir. That is correct. And then the last question. So, among the MCU movies, Captain America the First Avenger is one of only two movies, along with Avengers Endgame, to have one thing in common. Name this one commonality.
What? Um,
Yeah, I feel like I hope to stump you on this one. I
I
can't get you
mean,
all the easy ones.
like, I would say there's no post credit because this post credit is literally just a trailer for
Yeah.
Avengers 1. So I'm gonna say there's no post credit.
Well, that is correct.
There
Good
we
job
go.
there. Wow. Yeah, I thought I'd stump you with some of these, but yeah, no, this one was right. Yeah, so I said that there's no separately filmed post-credit scene at the end of the movie because Cap 1 has a teaser for the Avengers, but it's not really a post-credit scene, and of course Avengers Endgame doesn't either.
Hmm.
But very good guesses there. This was a solid one for you. You got 4 out of the 5 right.
Woo!
That's a good one. That's very, very
Back in the
good.
game.
Oh yeah, I mean you might be winning, I think, now with the 4. That's a pretty big one.
Scored a beat.
Yeah, I mean unfortunately, I mean let's see with Avengers. I don't know if we'll have time to do one for ourselves, but I guess we can tease this, but we are likely having a guest on for our Avengers episode. So you and I might not be doing the trivia questions on that
Yeah.
one. But
Yeah. We'll figure that out.
yeah, we'll figure that out when we get to it. But I guess a tease for our listeners there. We have potentially a guest coming on. But yeah, so good job there, Chris. You did a really good job on that trivia. I was hoping I'd stump you on a couple of
Man,
them.
if I followed my gut with the Tucci one, I would have just gotten them all.
Yeah, you would have gotten them all. But man, I kind of wish you didn't listen to your gut for all of them, so I could have gotten some more points on you. But you did well there. I can't knock you on that.
Yes, thank you.
All right. But yeah, I guess we can jump into Act Two now. So, Act Two starts off with the scene of the Nazis coming to visit Schmidt at his lab. And I like this whole scene because it like really shows that, the whole goals of Hydra have really grown beyond what the Nazis initially, I guess, were
Hmm.
looking at. And obviously the whole scene ends with Schmidt really killing those Nazis and severing, and I think it sort of symbolizes, Hydra's sort of grown beyond it and they've severed their connections with the Nazis almost in a way. Um, they're not necessarily working for the goals of Hitler, but they're working for the goals of Schmidt, I guess, even though
Hmm.
the goals are probably similar of like world domination or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah. And another, I guess, an interesting thing, I don't know if you picked up on this also, but the sound effect that they used for all of like the
It's like the
Tesseract weapons.
repulsors.
Yes. Yeah, it's the sound of the repulsor beams. And I think they've probably pitched it a little bit depending on whether it's like from a pistol or like the giant guns.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, very clearly you could tell that it was like the repulsor sound effect, which I thought was interesting. Um, yeah. And then I think obviously after that we jump back to the U.S. and you can see that everyone is sort of still reeling from Erskine's death. Cap gets a lot of his blood drawn out, which ends up being a plot theme in the first season of Agent Carter, apparently, where they're dealing with blood. I don't know if you remember that, Chris.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a whole thing. Man, I don't know. I'm curious to rewatch that show at some point because that's I feel like that's almost a fever dream. There's like the era of like Agents of Shield and whatnot. So,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, yeah, but yeah, he's getting his blood drawn, and then of course Cap wants to help in any way he can, but Colonel Phillips sort of rebuffs him and is like, I wanted an army and I got you, or I got you, so I'm sort of done with you. Going to send you off to a lab for tests. And of course, Cap doesn't want to do that, and he sort of gets wooed by Senator Brandt to go around on this little tour of his.
Hmm.
And I got to say, for even though I mean, I guess the tour is what it is, like a small little sequence, but the song that they have, that whole Captain America song, is honestly kind of a banger. I don't know what you thought about that
Yeah.
song.
Yes. Yeah. It's catchy. It's
It is
catchy.
definitely catchy. Yeah, no, they did a good job with that whole thing. And I guess speaking to your point earlier about the whole like Shield sort of foreshadowing bit, even in New York, they have a nice little foreshadow where he's holding up the I guess they're in like, Radio City or something, like the whole sort of circular motif that they have looks like his
Hmm.
shield, basically. I don't know if you
Hmm.
caught that. So, yeah, I guess a little foreshadowing there. And I get the act really picks up when he goes to the front lines where I think it's like Italy or something they said he was at.
Yeah. Yeah. Bring out the girls.
Bring out the girls, yeah, exactly. And they start throwing tomatoes at him.
Yeah. Rotten
I'm losing
tomatoes.
money on this deal. Like,
One thing I do want to say before we transition,
yeah.
um, they they give us like I guess more of the sort of more classic Cap costume, his
Yes.
outfit for the theater, but then two, back on his United States tour, you see like all these kids buying the Captain America comic books, which
Hmm.
um, believe is like the cover of the first issue of Captain America.
Yeah.
So I guess Captain America comics are canon in the MCU. It's
Yeah.
pretty meta. But anyway, sorry to digress, but yeah, just wanted to point that out. It's
No,
pretty
no, no.
cool.
I mean that's that it's just a conversation. So yeah, no, I'm glad you brought those up because I completely forgot to bring those up myself. But yeah, no, the first comic did show up. The first suit was there, of course, like the and I don't know. I guess they kind of used it to show how goofy the original suit looks.
100%.
Yeah, the original suit does look a little. I guess it works in the context of the comics, of course, but I guess a guy in spandex doesn't look that good. And I think the suit that we end up getting in the movie looks really, really good.
Yeah.
Obviously comes a little bit later on, but I guess do you have any thoughts on that suit overall? Because I really like it. I like that it looks so tactical and like worn in, and it looks of the era, honestly.
I do. I like the final suit of this movie with the little patches of gray in it as well.
Mm,
I do like his suit when he goes. I guess this will segue us back. When he goes to rescue uh, Bucky's battalion,
yes.
um, he takes a helmet that has an A on it from one of the dancers for that tour. He has the goggles on it, and he has like I guess a brown sort of trench coat.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I really like that look too. But
Oh
yes, I
yeah.
do I do like his final suit in this movie.
Yeah, no, definitely. I like all of the, I mean, I really like the both of those suits. Yeah, the leather jacket with the cargo pants and then the
Hmm.
spandex, I guess, bodysuit look really good. And then of course the final suit, which is much more tactical and purpose built, looks also really, really good.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we can jump right into that whole sequence where he frees Bucky and infiltrates the Hydra camp. And yeah, I mean, of course, this is, I guess, fighting back against that whole the whole thing that Colonel Phillips says, like, "Oh, you want to be a little show monkey? Like, you're not really doing anything here, like you were." And of course, Peggy is the one that sort of urges him on, saying, "You were made for a lot more than this." And of course, he knows that, and hearing about Bucky sort of spurs him into action here. And yeah, I mean, I guess, do you have any thoughts on the whole Hydra camp? I feel like I always start these off, but I guess you can start off with your thoughts on the Hydra camp sequence.
Um, I don't know. I don't have too many thoughts on it. I felt like it just kind of felt like your typical prisoner camp.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't personally think there was too much. I mean, there wasn't really that much. I was like, oh, like
yeah,
this is something different. I mean, you can see how they're mass producing weapons and
mm,
I guess building is Red Skull's plane called the Valkyrie. I know
is
you can
it?
see how they're mass producing that his plane and they're just using essentially POWs as workers, but
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
not out of the ordinary, I would
yeah.
say.
Definitely for the era, that definitely is on brand in terms of what I guess people were doing during the war, like just using their prisoners as laborers. But yeah, I mean, I think that I think I would agree with you, and I think that that's sort of a critique of the whole movie overall. Is that a lot of these sequences feel sort of run of the mill. There's nothing to, I guess, stand out about them overall. The whole sequence at the prison, like you would think that that'd be sort, or I guess the Hydra base would be something a little bit more to write home about, and it's sort of generic overall. It just sort of like is there to sort of get to the point of getting out Bucky and saving the 107th, and I guess the Howling Commandos there as well. Of course, I guess the most notable thing here is one is, of course, Bucky was in Zola's lab getting something done to him. We don't know what, which I guess sort of leads into what happens to him at the end of the movie, and then him becoming Winter Soldier later on, which, spoiler warning, of course. And of course, the other big thing is that they encounter that Cap encounters the Red Skull for the first time, which I gotta say, the reveal for the Red Skull and then the actual makeup for the Red Skull, how they,
Hmm.
conceived it on the screen looks really, really good. I mean, he looks like the comics almost exactly, the skull and whatnot.
Yes, I agree. I think they did a great job. I mean, uh, one downside is probably the main reason why Hugo Weaving did not return.
Yeah,
But the prosthetics look phenomenal. I rather them have done it that way, very practical, than just do some sort of CGI BS on it.
of course, of course. No, I mean, of course they had some CGI on there. They had to CGI the nose out, like they couldn't,
Yeah.
chop off his nose. But I mean, regardless, yeah, I agree. He looked really good, and the prosthetics were really, really good overall. And it was a good sort of encounter, but again, nothing to write home about, I would say. And I think that the interactions between Cap and Red Skull were sort of where the script really falls short, in my opinion. Here and then even at the end of the movie where they're sort of fighting, it's not particularly great, I would say. I don't know if you had thoughts on the script, I guess, overall.
I honestly, it didn't stick out to me where it was like jarringly bad, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do wish we had gotten more Red Skull of, him build out his character a little bit more rather than, oh, he's this sort of crazy guy who wants to dominate the world like a, typical villain complex. I'm,
Definitely.
we
Yeah.
didn't read the comics to the point where like, okay, this is kind of how his character is, or know how his character is, but I get the sense that he was a much more dynamic sort of character in the comics than just this one note. Oh, I want to dominate the world sort of deal. Like, I'm
Yeah,
sure there
yeah.
was more subtleties and to his character than just that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that this is, part of the common complaint of early MCU, like the villains just not being as fully fleshed out and developed as you would like them to be.
Except Loki, but
Um,
yeah.
yeah, except Loki, exactly, and probably even Ironmonger a little bit. I would say this is, it goes more into like phase two, where phase two, some of the villains also weren't particularly great as we were getting some of the new heroes, like
Hmm.
like with Aldrich Killian and Malekith and Ronan the Accuser and that sort of stuff. But you sort of see bits and pieces of that in phase one as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think that that's definitely a fair complaint. I would like to learn more about him. And I mean, this is a 2 hour movie. It's not like a particularly short movie per se, but I feel like we could have gotten more development also of the Bucky Cap relationship, especially after
Well, I
Cap
mean, yeah,
became
yeah.
Cap.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously later down the road we do in future movies,
Of
but yeah,
course.
I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of course, we do get, their characters interact more in later movies, but I do feel like we could have gotten a little bit more. And we got little glimpses of that in this movie too. Like when he saves him, he's like, "Oh, is this permanent?" And he's like, "So far." Like I like those little interactions that they had, and I kind of wish that they had more of them, which is why I'm, sort of lobbying for it, even though I guess it's too late for that. But you
Yeah,
know,
thought you were smaller. I joined the what happened?
yeah,
I joined the
exactly.
army.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. I think like those moments, like those sort of personal interactions that Cap has with his friends and like
Yeah,
Agent Carter, for example, like that's where the script I think works really well. Like it's like sort of quick and it's pithy and it like gets to the point in terms of character development, but you don't really get that with other parts of the script is where I was going for,
well,
and
this kind of goes back to what we were talking about during our Thor episode. Is the best moments are the character interactions when it's about the
yes,
characters, and
yeah,
I don't know. I
yeah,
just for movies, that's kind of how it should be because they are about the characters. That's what should be driving these movies and being the best parts of them.
of
Um, and
course.
and it makes sense. I don't know why a lot more movies don't maybe put that emphasis on it, but yeah, like this is just sort of like I guess our own opinions, but uh, it's our favorite parts, as audience members.
No, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I mean, it's a good call from the Thor episode for sure. Like the best parts are I mean, and that's why people are invested in the MCU, or at least were up till
At
Avengers
least,
Endgame.
yeah,
I mean, I feel like the investment has definitely taken a bit of a nosedive, I would say, but at least till Avengers Endgame, a lot of people were invested in because of the characters, and I feel like they haven't really done as much of a good job in investing in those characters as we've gone on here.
hmm
Um, and one and after the whole Hydra sequence, of course, I guess to get us back on track a little bit is when they're walking back into the base. Is I think the first time we really get any sort of notable music in the movie. Like I don't know if you noticed any of the music earlier in the film, but like the actual Captain America theme, like
I know. I
his
agree with
heroic
you.
theme.
Hmm.
When he comes back into the camp, this is the first time we really hear it, and
Yep.
it's a good theme overall. Like
It's
I
a
mean,
very
out
this is yeah, this is I mean, you talk about scores, musical scores the past few episodes, and none of them are really that sort of noticeable or something that you remember memorable.
yeah,
This one is definitely up to this point the most memorable one in my opinion.
For sure, for sure. And I think what helps with that, honestly, is that obviously this movie is scored by Alan Silvestri. He comes
Mhm.
back to do the Avengers, so he actually drops little hints of that in the Avengers as well, which I think definitely helps cement those little bits of Captain America's theme
Hmm.
overall. Unfortunately, we don't get Silvestri back for the later movies, though Henry Jackman, who did the scores in Winter Soldier and Civil War, did a very good job there too. But of course, it's a very different sound
Yeah.
than the sort of old school brass heroic theme that Silvestri crafted for Cap in
Hmm.
the first two outings that he had in the MCU.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and then of course after the whole thing, we get after the whole Hydra rescue sequence, we get um, the Stan Lee cameo finally, where Cap is supposed to get a medal from Senator Branton, doesn't show up, and then we actually get the whole little montage and that's really where the whole second act ends. And I think the really only thing that I have to add on this bit is I really wish we got more of the Howling Commandos,
I agree.
and I do wish that honestly I feel like that would be prime for like almost like a mini series of a sort. Like
Yeah.
we don't necessarily even need Cap, but like if we just got the Howling Commandos in like I don't know 2 or 3 mini episodes or like a special or something, kind of like how they did with like Werewolf by Night, I think that would be
Yes, I
great.
think.
I wish, yeah,
Yeah, I think that was that'd be like an ideal sort of Disney Plus limited miniseries or something.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would love to see the Howling Commandos in action because I feel like they're. I mean, they were just there, but they had such cool designs like Dum Dum Dugan and Marita, and like they just seem like interesting characters, and I wish we got to explore them a bit more.
Hmm.
And but yeah, I mean, I guess any final thoughts on Act Two, and we can jump into the quick Stan Lee cameo ranking here.
Yeah, no, let's go to the cameos.
Yes. So of course, this one, like we just said, at the end of Act Two, we get Stan Lee as an army general or some high up member in the armed forces, quipping, "Oh, I thought he'd be taller," when Cap is supposed to come out. So, Chris, how would you rank this across the various Stan Lee cameos we've had so far?
I thought it was funny. Um,
Yeah.
I thought it was better than Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I liked it better than Thor.
Okay.
In terms of Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2 for me are pretty similar.
Okay.
Uh, so I would put it in that vicinity. I don't know if it's behind Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2 or if it's in between Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, but it's in that vicinity.
Okay. Okay. And those were your top two, I would say, right, in terms of the Stan Lee rankings?
Yeah, as of now, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I think for me, the most humorous so far was the Thor one. I really liked that he played sort of like a one of the rednecks, like trying to pull out Thor's hammer in the truck. I really did like that. I would say, I mean, this one's a short little like humorous bit. I would say that I liked it more than the Iron Man cameos. I know we have slightly different rankings here. I would
Yep.
probably rank the Iron Man cameos a little bit lower. I'd say probably the Incredible Hulk one is the worst for sure. I would
Yes.
say this is probably number two for me. So I would say probably Thor is number one so far, then this, then Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and then Incredible Hulk.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's our Stanley cameo ranking for this movie. Of course, I say this every episode, but I think it's going to get more interesting as we get like later on with more movies under our belt here. But I think we're getting to that point now. Like we're almost what like 4, 5 movies in. Yeah, we're 5 movies in now. So I think it'll get more interesting. I think once we get into phase two and have a lot more to chew on there. But yeah, I mean, Act Three. I guess we can jump right in. I guess unless you have anything else you want to add there.
Now let's go to Act 3.
Sounds good. I mean, Act Three. There's not really much here in Act Three. I mean, it's just
There really
basically
isn't.
they capture Zola, and then after they capture Zola, they find where the Hydra base is, and then it's basically the final sequence where they infiltrate the big Hydra base in the Alps, and then the Cap and Red Skull fight. So I guess we could just sort of talk about Act Three as a whole. I mean, what are your thoughts on Act Three? Were there things that stuck out to you?
Act 3 sets up a lot for the future of the MCU with,
Yes, it does.
with Zola being captured and Tommy Lee Jones's captain was Chester Phillips.
Yeah.
Um,
Was
yeah,
it Captain or
basically.
Colonel?
Oh, sorry, Colonel. I'm thinking Captain Phillips. Yeah, Colonel Chester Phillips. I'm the Colonel now. Um, him presenting Zola essentially this opportunity of working for the SSR, soon to be Shield. Setting that up for a potential invasion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course we get Bucky, who him and Steve are on the train, and Bucky wields the shield temporarily, and then falls to his death, apparent
Yes.
death,
Yep.
out of the train. That's we'll see it where that goes. And then obviously we have, like you mentioned earlier, Red Skull kind of being sucked up into space by the Tesseract.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, this third act, I think, does a lot for setting up for the future of the MCU.
For sure.
But yeah, otherwise, I don't feel like there's really much sort of meat to this third act.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that yeah, I mean it's a lot of setup. I mean, and I would say though for considering we had another movie that did a lot of setup for the future of the MCU in Iron Man 2, I felt like this was a lot more organic in what it accomplished for setting
Mm-hmm.
up the MCU,
Oh,
whether it was
100%.
intentional or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Iron Man 2 was just literally, you could feel the studios like shoving a spoon down your throat of like, we're gonna give you this so you're ready for the next phase or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, you're ready for Avengers. Here you go.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
this, I agree, this is a little more organic. It it played to what was already in the earlier acts, whereas
Hmm.
Iron Man 2 is kind of just like very blatant. Like,
Oh, for
oh,
sure.
Cap Shields, like,
Yeah.
what is this doing here? It's like, that had no business being there. But yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. I think the whole sequence in like the middle that pops up with like Shield and
Yeah,
with what's his name with Agent Coulson,
Coulson.
like that
Yep,
was totally
100%.
unnecessary,
Yeah,
unnecessary.
100%.
But yeah, and yeah, but that's yeah, I would agree that I think that the whole point this one definitely sets things up more organically, and I think part of that is they probably didn't necessarily plan it to set up things. I think it was more just like things that happen and they sort of took those story threads and moved them on in later movies. So I don't think that it was set up with the intention of future stories per se, unlike Iron Man 2 where it was very clearly like, oh, we're doing this to set up for this, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with Skull, I would lean towards, yeah, they really probably didn't have the plan for him to be the Stonekeeper.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Um, but with Bucky, and maybe even Zola to an extent, I think they probably had some sort of idea, because I think the Winter Soldier character became a thing in the mid 2000s. So it was like only,
Yeah.
only like maybe like 5 or so years, um, by the time this movie released. It was like probably only 5 years since Winter Soldier debuted. So I'm sure and it was a pretty popular comic, I believe. So I would think they probably
Hmm.
had some sort of idea like, let's keep this thing open ended. You know, we have we showed Bucky was being experimented on earlier in the film. He falls, like, who knows? Like, we decide to bring him back for his Winter Soldier, or we can just leave it as is.
Right, right. Yeah. No, it's a good point. Like I think that the whole I mean, they definitely set up stuff there, but it's not in terms of like Bucky being the Winter Soldier. I didn't even actually think about that in terms of when the Winter Soldier comic came out. Do you remember what year it came out? I think I have it up here. 2005. So I guess it
Oh,
existed,
yeah.
but he didn't and they definitely teased some of those things cuz he even came as like Bucky became quote unquote Captain America in 2008, and they sort of teased that with him picking up the shield as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, clearly there were some teases there, but and I think that was probably more fleshed out. But I agree with you. I don't think all of it was like the
Hmm.
Red Skull, obviously being the
Yeah.
guardian of the Soul Stone and Vormir, definitely
Yeah.
not planned out there. But yeah, and I think another thing that stuck out here was even though I mean the third act is kind of a nothing burger in terms of like things to talk about, I would say, other than the action sequences. Again, we get some more of those, like, human moments. Of course, the big one is the Peggy and
Yeah,
Steve conversation when they're on the plane and he's about to crash,
gotta put
which,
it in the
I
water.
mean, I think I would agree that I think you would agree that that's probably the most, heartfelt moment of the movie. But I think even
Yes.
the whole scene after Bucky fall, like the whole train sequence where Steve is in the rubble of a bar and is talking about how he
Hmm.
can't get drunk. Like, I mean, it kind of pokes fun at the whole thing, but like also at the same time, you can definitely tell like he's like very upset about the whole situation,
Hmm.
um, and just trying to, have a drink to his friend who he thinks is dead.
Yeah.
Um, and I think part of those are really the again speaks to the character moments in the overall MCU and really shows how attached he was to Bucky for sure.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah. And then after the whole plane crash at the end, that's another bit where I think the music does a really good job. Like the really sort of melancholy, like sad music that Alan Silvestri has going on. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I really like that sort of whole. I think the music really fit the whole emotion there that this movie was trying to go for.
We should just petition to get Silvestri back in the MCU.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, we've not had necessarily bad. I mean, it's been a while, I feel like, since we had movies, well, or like good scores or like really memorable scores. Because, like, what was the last MCU movie again? Was it Love and Thunder? Or was it Quantumania?
Quantumania was after Love and Thunder. Was that the most recent one?
Most recent MCU movie.
Because obviously the Marvels comes out like this weekend or
I
this
mean,
week.
yeah, the Marvels comes out this weekend, of course, but yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
That's sad if it's
No,
Quantumania.
of course, it was Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, Volume 3. How do we forget that?
I can't believe we forgot
Yeah,
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume
there's
3.
no way it was like, oh, we had something in like whatever it was, February, and then there's nothing until November. Yeah, okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it feels so long ago, my God. But I mean,
it
that
does.
does have a good score. The guy who does the score for, John Murphy, who did the score for Guardians of the Galaxy, that was a good score, I would say. And that has, I think, very consistent. They had the theme, the Guardians theme, through all three of those movies. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's only been a handful of movies that have had. I mean, they've I think done a better job, Marvel now for sure. But I will never say no to more Alan Silvestri
Hmm.
in terms of scoring for sure. But yeah, I mean, I guess the last bits here were after the war is over,
Yeah,
we get some of the glimpses of the aftermath, of course, where uh, the SSR is sort of shutting down from its wartime efforts, and then you see Howard is obviously looking for Steve, and they find the Tesseract at the ocean or in the ocean, and yeah, and then I think that's really the end of the 1940s sequence, and then we flash to the present day, or what we learn to be the present days, where when Steve wakes up after the ice and tries to escape the Shield base, and
you've
I
been
guess do you
asleep
have
for
any thoughts
70
there?
years. I
Yeah.
do, I do, and actually, that I have two criticisms.
Mm.
One going back to I guess in the 1940s. Why is everything labeled in English when they are German? Like all of the bombs are like labeled in English, like New York, Chicago,
Ha. Oh,
like
that's
everything, like even on Skull's sort of GPS thing, it says like New
autopilot.
York City. Yeah, yeah, on the panel, autopilot. Like
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, obviously, for as a viewer, as an American made by an American company, they're gonna put that in for easy accessibility, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Like,
guess it's a
come on.
minor point, though. It is a minor point because all of the other stuff, like in the Hydra bases, were all in German, to their credit.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a fair criticism there. Though I will say another interesting Easter egg in that, which I mean, I don't know if it's really an Easter egg. It's I guess more of a retroactive Easter egg was above New York when they had the whole thing, like where it says New York on like his little like radar map. It
Yeah.
actually says the German word for soul above it, I believe.
Didn't it say like Zion or something like that? I don't know. I
It's
saw I
it's
saw a
I,
word.
it's something like Zeal,
Oh,
Ziel or something,
something. I
which
saw it. Yeah, something like that.
I believe translates to soul in German, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I'm obviously I think now we can look back on it like, oh man, he was the guardian of the soul stone, but I don't think they really cared about that at the time. So,
It's
but
true.
interesting little Easter egg there.
Wonder why they put that.
Oh, so zeal apparently translates to goal also in German. That's why.
Well, that makes more sense.
That makes a lot more sense, but I don't know. IMDb did say that it was something about that also translating to soul. Maybe it was in a different language. I'm gonna try and pull that up. But anyway, um, yeah, I guess that's a fair. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on your second criticism there. What
Yeah,
was your other
no.
criticism?
My other criticism is, you know, Shield is basically the CIA, but better, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't know the way they've kind of positioned it, but of course, the one baseball game that Steve Rogers goes to, they put it on the radio, and it just he happens to recognize I was at this game. Like you could have picked any other game.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
you know, I will say I think that was one criticism that I was going to bring up that like look, they know roughly when Cap crashed the plane and they know when he was and wasn't alive. Like they could have found another game like from after the time that he crashed. Like it didn't have to be a game from 1941, you
it
know?
could have been a game while he was in the army.
Yeah, exactly. It could have been a game while he was in the army, while he was on tour. Like it could have been any game. Like it didn't
Yeah,
have to be that like that one specific game from 1941. I don't know. I agree with you on that one. That was one that I was actually going to bring up, but yeah.
but yeah, otherwise, no, that's really my criticism. My only criticism on it. It was cool that to see a present day New York,
Hmm.
sort of in contrast to what we've been seeing 1940s New York, and then obviously Fury coming out saying you've been asleep for 70 years, and then Steve's first reaction is like, I missed a dance.
Yeah, yeah. Again, sort of hits back to that sort of character dynamic that he had with Peggy, which again it's almost like a bittersweet sort of ending there, which I kind of like the way that that ended.
Yeah.
Um, Another small little Easter egg, which I was thinking of putting in the trivia, was the woman that wakes him up in the Shield base. You know who they were initially thinking of having appear instead of that random lady. I'm sure you can guess, but
No, it would have been funny if it was Sharon Carter though.
oh my god, no! I
um,
mean, they did say Code 13 when he escapes,
oh,
but
they did.
but
What if they put Widow there?
yeah, it was supposedly there were rumors that Scarlett
Okay.
Johansson was going to appear as the nurse in that.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah. I mean I think that would have been cool. I don't think that really loses anything by not being her, but
Hmm.
I guess it would have been an interesting way to tie it into
Yeah.
Avengers again, just sort of the Avengers interacting with one another.
Yeah, no, it would have made sense. Like,
Yeah.
not like Iron Man 2, where it's like, why do you need Black Widow babysitting Tony Stark?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, but I guess that's Cap honestly. I mean, we that's was there anything else you wanted to discuss before I guess we go into giving out our scores here?
No, we can, yeah, let's give out our ratings. Where do you put
Cool.
this?
Where do I put this? Yeah, so I mean, I think I agree with your initial take on the movie that like it's obviously not the greatest movie in the MCU, but I feel like every time I watch this movie, it gets a little bit better for me, and I think part of that is again just the period nature of it, and it does a lot of good work in setting up Cap as an interesting character, and of course Peggy, and a lot of stuff that it sets up, like the Tesseract and all of that
Hmm.
stuff. So, I feel like I'm leaning between like a three, and we're doing what out of five, right? And
Out of
quarter
five with
points
quarter points, yeah.
out of five with quarter points. So I'm thinking either you know what? I'll be generous and I'll give it a flat four. I would say. Um,
Really?
nah, you know what?
That's an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, that's high. I'll probably bump it down to like a 3.75, I would say.
Oh, wow, that's a lot higher than I expected.
Yeah, I think part of it is, it's just a charming little movie, kind of like how Thor is for me. Um, Not like the greatest movie ever, and maybe I'm being a little bit too generous with the score here, but yeah, I'd say like I'll bump it down again. 3.5. That's my final answer,
Final
3.5.
answer?
Final answer, 3.5.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, that was a lot higher than I expected, but nevertheless, it is your ranking. So,
Yeah.
um, for me, I think because I'm also thinking on like a 10-point scale.
Mm.
I'm thinking more of like a three.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay, that low. Interesting.
well, I'm trying to think through it now because let's see, Thor, I put it at three. I like this better than Thor, honestly. Um, we'll put it at 3.25, 3.25.
3.25. Okay. Okay, that's not too bad. That's like a 6.5 basically.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. That's I think a solid score overall. Um, yeah, okay. Yeah. Honestly, I might have also still ranked it a bit high at a 3.5, but I'm fine with that. I think it's a charming little movie. Um, I actually think that I like Thor a little bit more than this movie. Just
really.
because I think the character dynamics in that movie are better than they are in Cap. Like the whole
Okay,
relationship between Thor, Odin, Loki, like that triumvirate really worked, I think, well for me and really drives that movie. Versus this one, I mean, it's really, I think Cap and Peggy are sort of the heart and soul of the
sure.
relationship in this movie. And I mean, there's a little bit with Bucky, but definitely not as much as we get later on in the MCU.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's it for Cap. I guess any other final thoughts before we wrap up here, Chris?
No, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I liked this movie a little bit more after rewatching it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like I mentioned, I think making it a period piece did this movie very well.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's part of one of the best superhero movie trilogies out there right now.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, I will say though, a lot of the heavy lifting is done with the later half of this trilogy, two and three, for sure.
yeah, 100%.
But yeah, this is it's a good foundation for the Captain America character, I would say.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with your take here. It definitely is a movie I feel that gets better every time with the viewings for sure. And definitely agree. One of the best trilogies in the MCU. I would argue maybe the best trilogy in the MCU, or one of the best. Um, I feel like you'd probably also put like Guardians up in there,
Yeah, I was
right?
gonna say Guardians, but I know how you feel about Guardians too.
Well, Guardians 2, I mean, we'll get to Guardians 2 when we get to it, but I that is a strong trilogy overall too. I mean, like for the faults that Guardians 2 has, but that's I guess not
Yeah.
related to the Cap discussion. But this is a good trilogy on its own, and this is a good start to the trilogy, I would
Yes,
say
I
overall.
agree. I agree.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that's another episode in the books there, Chris. I mean, of course, I guess I'll go through the usual housekeeping bits here where, thanks again, of course, for listening to our episode. If you enjoy it, please, comment, or like and subscribe, or give us a rating on any of the podcasting platforms of your choice. We're, of course, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts, which is changing and no longer going to be Google Podcasts for too long because Google likes to kill off their platforms, I guess. But um, yeah, we're wherever you're available. We're available wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have any questions, of course, or comments on our episodes, please feel free to reach out to us at ostrichtechnique@gmail.com. And of course, we will be back next month with our episode on the Avengers. Of course, that'll be a little bit of a long. I mean, I feel like this episode also
Supersized
ran,
episode,
but it will be a supersized episode. That will
an
be a longer
Avengers
episode.
level episode, you might
Yes,
say.
it will be an Avengers level episode. We did tease that we will likely have a guest star on our Avengers episode, so stay tuned for that. And I guess, Chris, any final points you want to add here as we wrap up?
Nope, I think we covered some good ground with this movie.
Yeah, I think so. But I guess until the next one, see you around, guys. Take
See
care.
ya.
Bye.